We're going to cross then to Kyiv, talk to our Ukraine correspondent, Gulliver Cragg, who joins us from there. Gulliver, of course, as I say, everybody watching this vote incredibly intensely there.
Absolutely. But, you know, at the beginning of this year, there was a pretty clear dominant view in Ukraine that if Donald Trump won the election, it would be disastrous for this country. That was when Republicans close to Trump were blocking the passage of a crucial aid bill for Ukraine through Congress. Now, I think that opinions are a little bit more mixed, mainly because there's a feeling that the situation is pretty disastrous, whatever happens, and that a continuation of Joe Biden's policies under Kamala Harris might well not be enough to save Ukraine. The country's armed forces are losing ground and people every day on the front lines. They have the same, shortages of equipment, same disadvantages that they've always had, despite this aid having finally been passed. And there's a feeling that what Ukraine needs is, a real injection of a great deal more aid from its Western partners and from the US in particular, and that's not likely to happen under either of the presidents, both of whom have got their priorities more aligned on the problems with China and in the Middle East, of course. And that's led more and more people to start talking about the possibility of Trump as being more of a wild card. Of course, there are some people in Ukraine who believe that Trump is in Putin's pocket, that he has been communicating with the Russians, that he's working for the Russians. These phone calls with Elon Musk are being held up as evidence of that, or that Trump is simply so stupid that Putin will be able to manipulate him very easily. But you hear more and more people saying, actually, we don't know any of that for sure. There's no concrete evidence of communication between the Trump team and the Russians to back up Trump's claim that he could end this war in 24 hours. Perhaps what's going to happen is when Trump comes into office, if he wins this election, and then tries to solve the situation in Ukraine rapidly as he promised to do, he's going to come up against Vladimir Putin, who is absolutely unwilling to negotiate or freeze the conflict along anything like the current lines, because he believes, Vladimir Putin, that if he keeps on fighting, the Ukrainian front will simply collapse. And Donald Trump and his team might at that point realize that that would be very, very dangerous for world security and humiliating also for the United States, and that might lead to a change of course. So you've got this kind of hope, perhaps it's a hope born of despair, but you hear more and more people in Ukraine saying, actually, maybe it's not as clear-cut as we think about who is the better option for Ukraine's interests in particular.
Yeah, bearing all what you've just said in mind then, Gulliver, what's the government's approach to this then?
Well, apart from one interview where Volodymyr Zelensky described J.D. Vance, Donald Trump's running mate, as too radical, which I think he probably regretted after saying that, they've been very, very diplomatic and very careful not to be laying themselves open to any kind of accusations of having a preference or of interfering in US politics, of course. And also, when we saw recently Volodymyr Zelensky present his so-called victory plan in the parliament, he placed quite a lot of emphasis on what Ukraine could offer. And two things were the main points that he made there. One is in terms of European security. He suggested that Ukrainians could replace American forces in Europe. And then there were vague but words that have been interpreted as basically saying we're going to open up our mineral resources to you. And Ukraine's got very significant resources of oil, gas and important metals, lithium as well, which is very important for electric car batteries. And the Ukrainians seem to be saying, look, you're going to have great opportunities here and you don't want the Russians to get their hands on all of this. So that is being interpreted as an appeal to Donald Trump's transactional mentality.
Gulliver, thanks very much. Gulliver Cragg, our Ukraine correspondent.